I'm Brian, and welcome to BattlefieldResumes.com Leadership Podcast, where my twin brother Bruce and I are committed to building better leaders. From webcasts to webinars, podcasts to personal services, one-on-one coaching to online opportunities, remember, the key to success begins with building the leader in you. As part of the John Maxwell team, we want to live out the principles that John teaches. This is our rule of 5 that we seek to practice every day. To lead, to grow, to create, to excel, and to serve. Please visit us at BattlefieldResumes.com. And remember, make today count.
All right. Well, this is Bruce Benedict with Battlefield Resumes, and we have Brian Benedict on the line as well. Can you say hi, Brian?
Hey, there you go. Hi, Brian.
All right. Well, tonight we are lucky because we have Mr. Sam Cachola speaking with us today. Can you say hi real quick, Sam?
How you doing, Bruce? How you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming. I know it's the holidays, but it just shows your commitment to the vets, and that's what it's all about, is trying to give them the advantage that they need and that they want, and what we wish we would have had, right, back in the day. So,
amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
So Sam is the owner of Reality Realty Virginia Heroes, and out of Virginia, Maryland, and D.C., and he's number 2 in the country. He's also the founder of the Heroes Alliance Network and the HAND nonprofit and co-founder of Heroes Media Group. All of it's focused on education and empowerment of veterans. He's the recipient of the Entrepreneur of the Year Award, Military Friendly Business Award, and has been featured on Fox Channel 5, Military Times, Super Bowl Media 2014, and the Final Four Media Week 2014. So we're extremely pleased to have you on during the holidays and look forward to speaking with you tonight, Sam.
I'm excited. It's kind of funny to hear people read your bio because you just, when you're doing the work, you don't focus on that type of stuff, but we've been at it for a long time, and we've been very blessed to have people recognize us and give us opportunities to reach more people and serve those needs. So I'm just excited to be here with you, and I hope what we talked about today is helpful. I mean, you're absolutely right. I wish that we had had folks like us mentoring and putting the energy into personal development and showing what's possible post-service and showing us all how to take that 20-plus years of military experience or DOD experience and then, find a passion on the outside and serve in a different capacity. So it's truly an honor to be on the line with you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sam. Yeah, we're lucky to have you. Let's, one of the things with Battlefield Resumes that we try to do, especially with these podcasts, is we try to give the veterans and their spouses, and when I say veterans to everybody out there listening, I mean the veterans and the spouses of the veterans. And we try to give you guys the advantage. And one of the things that Battlefield Resumes, the methodology that we use focuses on is tailoring and targeting resumes, tailoring, targeting your job search, targeting your interview. And the interesting thing here is what we try to do is we bring CEOs on who can actually give you the inside scoop. So when you are finding a position with something that's associated with Sam Cachola or something associated with other companies, then you have the inside scoop on how to tailor and target your effort. All right, and so at this point, what we'd like to do, Sam, is just if you can talk to us a little bit about how you started in the military and, kind of relate to us. Because, like, for me and my brother, we started when we were 18 or we just turned 18.
Absolutely. So I'm the typical, inner city kid that was probably too smart for his own good, getting into a lot of trouble. And so academically, I wasn't necessarily the most sound kid. But, when I was getting ready to graduate high school, I had a lieutenant colonel who was a teacher, who was a retired lieutenant colonel and turned to teaching. And I was sitting down with him, And he's like, Sam, the worst thing you can do right now is go to college. He's like, you're just going to get in trouble. You really don't know what you want to do in school. You should really take a look at, joining the service. And so at that point, I investigated the services. I chose the Marine Corps. My uncle was a Marine. The emphasis on discipline. And, I think personally I want a little bit of a gut check. So that's why I went to the Marine Corps route. And so I started off as a communications guy. I did 4 years, deployed to Somalia, deployed to Okinawa, did all that stuff. And then it came time to re-enlist, and I'd started my college, and so I wanted to stay in. So I was looking for a career field that was going to be conducive to kind of pursue my education and rewarding in that area, as well as beneficial and something that within that MOS would get me promoted. So I screened for counterintelligence. I got accepted in the counterintelligence. I did a straight leg tour as a counterintelligence guy, finished my degree, and I competed for polygraph school. And I ended up going to the Department of Defense Polygraph School, which is a pretty big deal. It's a master's level program. All federal agencies who have polygraph examiners send everybody to that school. So, I was in a classroom with GS-15s, seasoned investigators, CID guys, OSI guys. So it was a really competitive environment. So that went real well for me. I got assigned to a special mission unit after that school. And then I served in that capacity until I got out, and then I joined DIA, got involved in the technical support side of things, and I recently retired last September, and I was dual-hatted. I was the acting deputy for the Office of Technology, and I was also the operations officer, and I was also serving as an instructor at the Joint Counterintelligence Training Academy. And so that's how I rounded out my career.
No, that's great. Yeah, so it's interesting because you retired from the military and retired from government service. Is that correct?
No. I actually ended up getting sick and getting out. I got sick. I got asthma. So then I ended up getting pretty much booted and went into the VA. So I got all the VA benefits, and I parlayed that into a government career, but I did not retire.
Awesome.
But cumulatively, it was 25 years of government service between the Marine Corps and DIA.
It's interesting because a lot of veterans, all three of us here started out as privates, I think. I know my brother and I both started out as privates, E1s, and the world looked untouchable back then. And and I kind of, I really feel for those who don't have the 20 years in. It's very difficult to make the 20 years, but when you're transitioning out, what would you say to some of those individuals who are maybe Spec 4s, specialist E5s who are getting out after 4 to 6 years? And what are they, looking at, and how maybe should they think about their future and transitioning?
Well, I think the basic thing that I have to plug right off the bat is education. You really need to continue to improve yourself, personal development. You're talking about leadership in John Maxwell, and that all begins with the individual. And so I think you really need to tackle the education piece. Now, whether that's a technical school, whether that's traditional college, whether it's certifications, whatever it is, you need to get that behind you. Yes, your military experience is great. There's a lot of intangibles that come along with that, the discipline, the leadership, the integrity, all the things that we live by as a code of honor within the service. But when you're getting out, folks want to see that you have continued to progress. And it doesn't necessarily matter what you're studying, but just that you start to study and you can finish it, that you can write, that you can comprehend, that you can work in a team environment. So I think that's very important. But I also think that it's secondary to being honest with yourself and realizing that you joined the service because you have the passion to serve. And it was really never about money. It was probably about stability or getting out of a bad environment. So you need to really sit down and not focus so much on the money. You need to focus on what drives you and what impact you want to have on this world. And that really distills down to finding out what your personal passion is, what your purpose is, and defining your own personal vision statement. So you're just you don't become a cog in the system, but you're really executing your life on your terms in corporations or as an entrepreneur or within the government on your terms, and it remains fulfilling. But I truly believe everything begins and ends with a crystal clear understanding of your purpose, your passion, and why you're doing what you're doing. And I think too often, guys get out and they start chasing a paycheck and they lose sight of that passion and purpose, and they wake up 10 years later in a job and they're miserable. And that's it's sad. I mean, I saw it every day in the government, and I see it a lot outside in the civilian sector with folks who are just punching a clock. I don't think anybody who puts on a uniform is designed to punch a clock, and they just really need to reconnect with whatever their purpose is and execute within those guidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the challenges with when you get out, because everyone tells you how much different it is and how much you may need to change yourself. And that's a challenge that I've had, and that's one of the reasons why I started my Battlefield Resumes, is because, all of us that served when we were privates, most of us knew, I think all three of us knew, that we wanted to serve when we were born. It was in our blood. And for somebody to actually tell us we needed to be somebody different, that's hard to accept. And we don't really know what that means. And so, I always tell everybody to try to leverage what you already know and the passion you have for the civilian environment. And so that's helped me out, trying to get out of the military. What was your decision after you left the military? How did you make the decision to go into the government versus corporate world?
I think following your recipe, at that point, I was leveraging what I had already accomplished. So the polygraph field for me was very niche, but I didn't even so much like the polygraph piece of it as much as I liked the involvement in the intelligence field, and so that was just part of it. So I was blessed to have an opportunity to leverage the polygraph piece to get into the intel side of the house, and I did polygraph for a few years, but then I parlayed that into what we call a technical support officer, and I got involved in technical operations in support of counterintelligence and human operations. So that was kind of my stepping stone there, and it worked real well for me. But I did that purely for about 5 years. But when I did my own reflection, I'd always had a passion for real estate, and I'd always viewed real estate as kind of having a home as having stability in your life. So I started to get real smart on real estate. I got my license and I started to work that, but I didn't work it from purely a sales perspective. I did about a year or so of in-depth research and reading and going to courses and really trying to understand what it meant to own a home and what it meant to facilitate home ownership. So when I sat down with people, we weren't just talking about interest rates and how much a house cost. We were talking about how it affected their lives and what they needed to do to hammer out a plan to be stable in that house for 5 to 10 years. So, I took that research experience, the understanding of, kind of the intelligence gathering piece and the interview piece when you're talking to clients, and I intertwine that into my approach to real estate. So, at about the 5-year mark, I'd say I was, dual passion. I was still very passionate about intelligence, but I was certainly passionate about the real estate thing. And I grew that business until I could retire, and it remains my passion. So when I transitioned after 25 years, last year I was able to go full-time and really ramp it up and continue to serve in that capacity.
That's awesome. And, one of the things that you were talking about, which is a challenge for a lot of vets when they transition out of the military, is what I find is a lot of veterans want to do something completely different than what their experience shows. But what you did was one of the things that I try to recommend to everybody, and that is, when you're transitioning, make the transition easy. Make it a lot easier than it can be, much easier than what others may encounter, and that is leverage what you're good at for the next position, and then when you're in that position, find something that you like, right? And then, like for you, you have the mission is bigger than us. I mean, most of us went into the service because we wanted to do something that was bigger than us. It was the mission. It was helping the U.S. out, and then we leveraged our experience when we got out to do something similar to what we may have been doing, just to make the transition easier. After a few years of that, with a paycheck in hand, now we're moving on to a skill that we want, something more fun maybe, and because our life changes about every 7 years, and, into another career path. And sometimes that may make it a little easier than, because the challenge that I've seen, and I don't know about you, but a lot of vets, when they transition out, if they don't want to stay with what they have experience in doing, they will always be starting over. And
Yes.
And it's very stressful, and it causes a lot of anxiety when you do that to yourself.
It does, and what happens is people, they basically they want to close that chapter of their life, and honestly, I think that's the worst thing you can do. There's, whether you had a good experience or a bad experience, there are positive things that you gained while serving, and you need to take a tempered approach to that transition, and understand that no matter what you do, if you go cold turkey, it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to really get your legs underneath you, to get into a position where you feel comfortable in what you're doing again. So what I tell folks, and very similar to you, is, again, leverage what you have. Take a tailored approach. Realize that Rome wasn't built in a day, so to speak, and design a plan leveraging what you already have, but map it out for that 2 to 3 to 5 year period where you're doing things so what you really want to do has the income and the potential so that you can finally make that break and make a smoother transition across the board. I think too many people just want to go cold turkey, and I have rarely seen that work. I'll tell you, the only time I have seen it work is when maybe people get involved in franchises and they're given a roadmap and they just follow that roadmap. But outside of buying into a franchise, I think you really need to have a phased approach to your transition and just realize that it's going to take a few years of you maybe doing two things before you can really focus on the one thing that you want to create as your new career path or your new passion in life.
No, absolutely. I call the civilian workforce, I try to relate it to my military methodology so I can make sense out of it. And the use of phase lines and phases of an operation is perfect,
Absolutely.
And so if you're transitioning out of the service, think of it as a war or a battle and try to create phases of the operation and objectives for each phase. And that'll make sense out of it and make it a little clearer,
It makes it crystal clear, Bruce. And you know what else I think it helps people understand is that, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So when folks are looking at that change, they're looking at this big elephant, and they don't know where to start. And they don't think they have what they need to do it, and they start, focusing on what they don't have. What they need to do is focus on what they do have and start doing whatever they can, no matter how small it is, to start moving that ball forward and getting into those phase lines where you're getting milestone successes and you're getting the transitions that you need and you're getting stronger. It's muscle memory in the military. You know what I mean? Like you end up, you learn how to do things over and over again, and you understand the time and the investment that it takes to be proficient, so to speak. But for some reason, folks think when they get out that they're going to get these great jobs or they're going to have all these great opportunities, and they kind of forget that in the military you started out as a private and you didn't know anything, and you had to learn, and you had to get mentors, and you had to do self-study and personal development and different courses and go to advanced training, and then that's how you ended up being that E4, the E5, or the the 03, the 04, the 05, whatever it may be. but they almost have this sense of it's beneath them to take that approach, and that they are owed a position, or the world should open up to them because they serve, and that's just simply not true. You have to make your bones on the other side of the fence in that civilian sector, if that's what you want to do, and then if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to make your bones there too. But I'll tell you, every study I've ever read is 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years before you're profitable. 3 to 5 years before you're vested. 3 to 5 years before you've really, you've reached your stride, and you're confident in whatever you've decided to do. So I think if people tackle it with that mindset, it'll be less daunting. And frankly, Bruce, they're going to have more fun with it.
Absolutely.
They create their own stress. They create their own, frustration because they're not being realistic with their situation and themselves. And I see a lot of guys, get defeated that way. So I think if you, just focus on what you do have, do the little things, continue to do the little things, follow your plan, stay in tune with your passion and your purpose, and you're going to end up where you want to be. Failure is not an option for us. It's just not.
No. It wasn't in the military, and it's not now in the civilian world.
No, not at all.
Well, and that gives us all the advantage. It really does.
Absolutely. But the thing in the military is, though, Bruce, that you get a pretty well mapped out plan. And when you get out, you don't have a plan. So they start trying to get a job without a plan. You got to, if anybody's listening to this, I think it's critical that you literally sit down and figure out your plan. Because if you have a plan, you'll follow it. But if you're just trying to get a job with no plan, you will end up at a job and you're going to be unfulfilled. And I'll tell you this, none of us did anything we did in the service for money. So you could, whether you make 50 grand, 100 grand, or 150 grand, if it's not rooted in your purpose and your passion, you are not going to be happy. You are not going to be happy. I know guys who get out. I had a friend of mine, he started in the car business, and he was making tremendous money. And, he ended up getting out of that because he was miserable. It's just not what he wanted to do, So don't chase the money. Get clear on your purpose. Keep doing the little things and execute your plan, and you'll end up where you want to be.
Right. And the money will come,
the money, absolutely.
Peace of mind, that means more than anything. So we're trying to give everybody out there an advantage, and we were just talking to Sam about the military experience and that transition. And so let's talk a little bit about your transition, Sam, into the realty business, and then let's go into the nonprofits that you have as well.
Absolutely. So the transition in the real estate business. Like I said, I started about 5 years or so after I got out. I got my license, and after I'd done that year or so of kind of in-depth training and really kind of understanding what I wanted to do, and I started working for other brokerages, again, on the low end of the totem pole, cutting my teeth, learning. I partnered with people at that time because obviously I had a full-time job, so, I needed a support mechanism behind me. And I did that for about a year or so until I really understood the process and refined my personal business model and how I wanted to do real estate. And you mentioned it earlier, it was more from an education and empowerment perspective than a sales and close the deal perspective. So it took me about 2 years to really get all that situated. I changed brokerages at that point to a franchise. It was actually RE/MAX. I bought a RE/MAX franchise. Because they allowed for more of a personal touch, not so much cookie cutter approach to real estate. I owned that for about 2 years. And then, one of the advantages years ago into being a part of a franchise was all of the systems and the back-end support that you got from the actual parent company, like Century 21, Coldwell Banker, RE/MAX. But luckily, in my career, my evolution, there was a huge change in that there were systems that were coming online that allowed you to do the same things from an independent brokerage that you could do with being a brokerage. So, I took a hard look at the fees, what I was paying, and what I was getting from Remax at that time, and I decided to open my own brokerage and leverage the technology that was out there. And at that point, I started a company called Preferred Real Estate. That was when the market was really going big. I had that through the bull market, and then when the bear market hit, we ended up contacting the banks, and we became the clearinghouse for a lot of the foreclosure properties that were there. So we did real well during that time period. And after the dust settled there, I had a partner. She was wonderful, but she wanted to maintain the relationships with the banks and wanted to get away from dealing with people. So we had a philosophical, difference there. We parted on great terms. We're friends to this day. But, I really continued to take it to the people, and that's when I started Reality Realty with, no pun intended, focusing on the reality of what it means for a family to own a home and maintain that home, and literally help them understand that buying a home needs to be a part of their life plan. They don't want to buy a home and then, live their life for a house. So we did that, and that's what we're doing now. And then about a year or two into that, we really started to focus on what we call the hero population. And that's, active duty, retired, reserve, military, firefighters, law enforcement, educators, medical professionals, specifically nurses and clergy. And I did that because, it really struck me, especially, post-September 11th, and then you had the major incidents in Boston and, all the things that were going on over the last 10 years with this war on terror, that the people, the nation is focused on veterans and how they serve every day, but there's a whole bunch of people out there that are battling every day in the streets, and they really keep this country together. And they don't have the same benefits that a veteran does. And so I really wanted to offer something to them from a benefit perspective, but I also wanted to help them gain some stability in their life. See, I'm a huge fan of Zig Ziglar, and he says, if you give people what they want, you'll get what you want. Well, if you look out there in a cop car, it always says protect and serve, right? You've got teachers who are out there investing in our future. We've got clergy who are trying to help us, find our center and facilitate our growth and our faith journey. And then you have our medical guys who are putting all the pieces back together. And so these people go out every single day and they do battle, no different than a military guy, but they don't have those benefits. And they want to give stability to the communities they live in, but they have some of the most unstable lives, believe it or not. And it's because they don't ever focus on money, they focus on service. And so, they go and do things because they have paychecks and they get cars and they get houses, and then they end up working overtime or taking on side jobs to pay for this stuff. But the problem is there's only so many hours in the day, right? So I don't want a police officer having to work overtime because he has to pay bills. He's going to be tired. He's going to be less efficient. Mistakes are going to happen. And that's across the board for the whole hero population. So what I wanted to do was really take the time and focus on them, educating them on what it meant to have a home and getting them into a home that they could afford with max emphasis on security and stability. So when they come home from battling in the streets every day or putting their life on the line in a fire or dealing with our children's youth, I want them to come home and just relax and be able to retool and refuel for the next day, because our country needs that, our community needs that, they need that. And so I just felt that there wasn't a mechanism there. So, that's why we started to focus on that.
Yeah, no, that's great. It definitely needs to happen too. I mean, somebody looking out for you, especially with one of the largest purchases you're ever going to encounter, you need somebody on your side. I mean, full disclosure, I use Sam, and I bought my house using, he helped me buy my house. So, I need somebody. It's almost like a boxing match, and I need somebody behind me in the corner that's going to, help me and have the advantage instead of somebody taking the advantage of me. and that's what you provide. It's fantastic.
And here's something I want the listeners to understand. It's a hypothetical, right? Say you hadn't ran into me. Say you didn't go through my process. Say we didn't sit down and you went and bought a house because, I know when we first started talking, you were looking at a much higher price point. And so as you got into that higher price point, you would have been working for that house. You might have had to take a second job or take on more overtime, right? Well, if that had played out, guess what Bruce wouldn't have had time to do? Bruce wouldn't have had time to write books. He wouldn't have had time to refine his process. He wouldn't have the time to be on the air with me tonight, putting energy into serving a greater good. And so that's what's at risk when you make these large financial decisions, specifically your housing, is that you may have a house, you may come home every day, but you're not going to have the time or the energy to put into things that really matter. And what I tell people is this, and I'm a very faith-based person. Money is man's currency. Time is the Lord's currency. You have to master your minutes and determine how you want to spend your time and the impact you want to have. And I guarantee you, nobody gets up in the morning and says, I want to spend 14 hours at my job to pay a mortgage. They always feel empty. They always feel like there's something more, and they're not fulfilled. And so that's what's at stake when you don't do this, when you don't do it right. You're really squandering your time and the impact you could have had on thousands of people. And really, Bruce, I'm going to plug you because I think what you're doing is, not only is it needed from a resume perspective and a job hunting perspective, but the way that you're coaching people to the next career or their next purpose in life and how you're helping them package themselves, I'm just so glad that you do have the time to do it, that you've embraced that responsibility and that you're getting joy out of it because, I've sent dozens of people to you and every last one of them is better for it. And it's because you have the time to do it. And that's really what folks need to understand is don't chase the dollars, master your minutes, find something in your life that you can invest in other people. And if you give people stability, if you give people security, you give people peace of mind, you're going to have that in your life. It's almost a universal formula. And that's why Zig Ziglar says it. If you help enough people get what they want, you will get what you want. I like to say if you help enough people get what they need, you're going to get what you need, right? Because needs are more important than wants. But I'll tell you, at this point in my career and having done this, for 25 years and been in the real estate business for close to 15 or 16, my needs are met. And I have the blessing in my life to focus on what I want and the blessing to focus on my passion, which is serving people. And so it is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But if you use that formula, you will be in a position that you want to be in, and you'll be fulfilled, and you'll be happy, and you'll go to bed at peace, and you'll wake up with passion, and it's just a wonderful way to live your life.
Sam, this is Brian over here, and I got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
You're hitting it right on the nail. I mean, I love that. It really is all about passion. It's about purpose, and if you do what it's not work if you like what you do. So,
amen.
And I really believe that. One thing I wanted to actually get the website of if you could tell us the website of your organizations, your realty organization, and your non-for-profit, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. From the real estate perspective, it's virginiaheroes.com. That'll take you right to it, and it'll give you a great overview of how we do things. And if you need any information, feel free to contact us on that. And then we've created the HeroesAllianceNetwork.com, and that's the overarching company where we try to align businesses and nonprofits who are supporting community hero causes in one place. Then we have HeroesAllianceFoundation.org is for our foundation, and what we're doing with the foundation there is because we spend so much time in the community, we are at the forefront of seeing what people's needs are. And like I said earlier, the veterans have the VA, and the VA is not perfect, so let me tell you, the vets still need support. But there's nothing comparable for community heroes. So what we're striving to do and what we've been successful at so far is really putting money directly into the hands of those community heroes whose benefits don't fully support their needs when they get into situations, whether it's health, whether it's fiscal, whatever it may be, and for their family as well. So that's where our focus is there. And then we also created Heroes Media Group, which is the only veteran-owned internet radio station out there. It's heroesmediagroup.com, and where we're putting we have like 12 or 15 shows right now, but we're giving people who are doing shows like yourself the opportunity to broadcast on our network, and we're using the Alliance to bring attention to that, so you're having a greater reach in the audience. So it's
that's great.
Heroesmedia.com, HeroesAllianceFoundation.org, HeroesAllianceNetwork.com, and it's VirginiaHeroes.com for the real estate stuff.
Great. And what's the contact number that someone could write down to contact you for the real estate end of that, and for someone to contact you for if they're, say, a police officer, firefighter, nurse, EMT, and they just like some information?
877-824-3763.
Okay, 877-824-3763.
Yes, sir.
Great.
It's actually great. I think it's 877 VA Heroes, or however we set it up. But and then my direct contact, and I have no problem with people calling me directly, 703-785-1158. If they've got questions about the Alliance, the nonprofit, or Heroes Media Group, they can reach us directly on that line.
Right. Great. Yeah. Yeah. That's I think it actually is I think it is a big problem. I talk about it quite a bit myself, as far as backing up when I got out of the military. I re-enlisted once and then got out, and your focus while you're in the military, or while you're in some of those career fields, those government career fields, it is all structured. You have a plan for you, and then one day you leave it, and you open the gates, and you look both ways, and the gate shuts, and you're like, all right, now what? And instead of thinking ahead, and a lot of times it happens in other career fields. I mean, when I'm a retired firefighter, so it happens in that. I've just seen it over and over again, and I didn't let it get me this time because I was prepared. But I see many retirees from a police and fire standpoint that are not prepared, and when that day of retirement comes, they think retirement is doing nothing, and that's probably the worst thing they could do. They think it's sitting in a chair or whatever, and it's not. You have to stay active. So
you listen to me, and I want every listener to understand this. When you live a life of service, that is ingrained in you. It is your DNA. It is impossible for you to do nothing. So for you to strive to do nothing is to literally set yourself up for misery. It's nice to take a break and scale back and take some time for yourself, and maybe take less risk as far as the firefighter is concerned. But you have to understand that at your core, you're built to serve, and that's
true. Yeah,
it's literally like going against gravity, right? So they have to really embrace that fact, and they may be burnt out, and they may be tired, and they may need a break, but they're going to always go back to their roots, their passion, and that's serving people. The other thing that, along the same lines, that folks really miss the boat on is not only do you have structure in the service or a police department or firefighting or whatever it may be, you also have a lot of good guys that you work with every day. You got guys to your left and your right that you depend on. that become your family, that become your brothers. And when you leave that, not only do you lose the direction, but you lose that daily interaction with people who truly have your best interest at heart. And so, you have like voids on two fronts. So you got to really understand that it's up to you now to ferret out quality relationships. It's up to you to maintain contact with these people. And the worst thing you can do is get around people who are doing nothing, who think it's okay for you to stop, because they're just going to give you bad advice.
Right.
They're just going to give you bad advice. They're going to sit there and talk about, oh, you got all this money, you're doing this, you got your benefits, just go fishing. Those people have never embraced their passion. They've never lived a life of service. They don't get it, right? And if you spend time around those people, you're going to go down a dark hole. You're going to go down a dark hole real quick. You got to stay around positive people. You got to plug into programs. You've got to seek out people who are going to challenge you, and continue to grow. Things either grow or die, generate or stagnate, or evolve or become obsolete. Those are laws of nature.
Right.
So stopping, you can't stop any of those. So you have to make a decision to be relevant, to grow, and to continue to evolve.
I've seen between guys getting out of the military and public service, if they don't have a plan, very easily they can get stuck very easily in a job that's paying them an income and lose that ability. I don't know if it's really ability, but lose that time that they could have been thinking about it and making a plan and preparing themselves, and all of a sudden they just need an income, and so they start working in a place where they really don't want to, but they're hiring right now, and so they'll hire me, and they go in there and they settle, and next thing you know, they're working swing shift or they're working overtime, and 2 years goes by, and they're like, man, this is not what I dreamt I was going to be doing after I left.
No. I see it a lot too, and the reason is because they've got to pay bills. So if I got to give one piece of advice to people, is stop trying to make more money and really focus on not having any bills. Because when you don't owe anybody money, you own all your minutes. And then you can really focus on what you want to focus on. And then what I see, even the people who are doing pretty good in that arena, they'll get out and say a military retiree or a law enforcement guy or firefighter that has a decent pension. Right now they're making, my buddy just retired from Trenton. He's making $100,000 a year. He's going to now get a job doing some stuff, and he's going to be making about $150,000 a year. So he's going to be making $250,000 a year, right? And what do you do with that money? Well, then these guys go and buy houses. They go and buy boats. They go and buy cars. Next thing you know, they're just broke at a different level, and they're still not happy. And they don't even have time to cruise around in the car or go fishing in the boat. It's the craziest thing.
It's true.
Right? Yeah. So it's all about not having bills, mastering your minutes, and when you make this money, have a plan for your money. But I can tell you, buying things with it is not really going to bring you any joy.
Right.
How many guys do we know get out, retire, and buy a Corvette or buy a crazy-ass truck, or they do something like that? I mean...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts.
Bruce, this used to really make me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
I would roll up into DIA headquarters,
and
there's thousands of people who work there, and I could park in the big boys parking spots, right?
Right.
And I would see people driving Maseratis, Porsche Panameras, and these cars that are $110,000. When that new electric car came out, the Tesla, I was seeing Teslas left and right, and I'm thinking to myself, you make $150,000 a year, and you just bought a $100,000 car, and then you want to come and talk about retiring and getting out early, and you can't believe you have to work so much overtime. Well, why in God's green earth do you have $1,000 car payment?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That should be one of the pieces in the plan. I always tell folks before they get out, as they're transitioning, if you don't have a template to use to create a plan, because vets are always told what to do by the transition offices, which is fantastic, but it's information overload a lot of times, and it's unfamiliar. So to make it familiar, I always recommend just use the operations order. Just use the operations order. It's got 5 paragraphs, and line out everything that you want to do by phases, like you used to, or even the troop leading procedures. Something familiar. Use that. But one of those things that you need to list is, if you have a year and a half before you get out and you're transitioning, you need to pay your bills down, and the debt to income ratio needs to be manageable to where you can actually get into a position that you enjoy, not one that you have to have.
Absolutely. And see, this is the thing. People pay down debt because they're fascinated with the credit score, right? It has nothing to do with your credit score. It has everything to do with you not owing money, therefore you own your minutes. Imagine if you didn't have any bills and no one to pay, but you're now making $250,000 a year. That's your money. That means you can pay off your house, you could go on vacations. You don't even have to work full time if you don't want.
Absolutely, that would be nice.
And I know $250,000 sounds like a lot of money, but I'm telling you, and it is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but you can have an amazing lifestyle making $100,000 a year if you don't have bills.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think the one point that you kind of glazed over there is all this transition assistance comes right before you get out, but the planning should start 2 years out, 18 months out.
Right.
You need that time. Time is what you need to get yourself in a good position, not just money.
Well, and one thing that I try to relate to the vets is that whenever you say a year and a half to 2 years, the immediate response is, wow, that's a long time ahead of time. Well, the reality, if you put it into perspective, is if you're going into war someplace unfamiliar, some unfamiliar country, you have green, amber, red cycles. You're going to plan 2 years out, and you're going to go to the field. You're going to do exercises prior to going on your deployment. So if you think about your transition in the same manner, then it makes a little more sense. It's a little more palatable to understand.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing in the civilian sector. You're going to have a business plan. You're going to revisit your business plan, your financial plans, your goals for the company, the goals for the organization you're working with. They're all mapped out years in advance. So you know this organically, but you don't apply it to yourself. Somehow people think they're above that planning process, or they don't. If they don't think they're above it, they might not know how to do it. So I think what you're saying with the 5-paragraph order is very sound. But how do you do it? But just understand this: it has to happen. And there's all kinds of books. There's all kinds of courses. There's all kinds of podcasts you can listen to. You need to start filling your brain and getting those new tools that you need to create and craft the life you want to have.
We've got about 10 minutes to go, and I wanted to bring up a couple items real quick. And we'll start hearing the countdown and the music at about the 30-second, until we go down. But I wanted to let everybody know that the financial advice that you're giving is definitely appreciated, and that it's coming. You have the Dave Ramsey certification, I believe, as well.
I do, actually. I'm a Dave Ramsey certified financial counselor, and I will say this: it's a national program, and you can plug into it anywhere in the country. And they actually have several different programs. They have a program for teens. They have a program for, everyday folks that are living life. And they actually have a specific program for veterans or military. So you need to seek that out. And I'll tell you, it's generally either free or maybe $150, whatever the cost of the books are. But it will be the best money you've ever spent and the best time you've ever spent, because you're investing in you. You see, what happens when you're in an organization like the military or law enforcement or any of the things that we're talking about here, the organization invests in you. You don't necessarily invest in you. When you break away from those organizations, you need to go find secondary avenues that you can use to invest in yourself. And it's personal development. It's all about personal development. And the more positive stuff that you put into your brain, the more positive people you get around, the easier it's going to be for you to plan, the easier it's going to be for you to get help, and it's going to be easier for you to execute that plan because now you have the infrastructure, the plan, and the people around you who are going to help you complete it.
I'm not, obviously advertising Dave Ramsey. However, I think all of us have used his method during our transition because it does work. One thing that I wanted to talk about in the last 10 minutes here is I know you have a lot of people that work for you. And whether it's for your nonprofits, the vet organizations, whether it's for real estate, what do you look for when you are interviewing or when you're looking at applicants who want to work for you? What do you look for? And then once they're hired, because their resume, their interview gets them there, but what keeps them there? All right. So kind of two phases to this. Can you explain to everybody, because some of the people out there probably would like to be real estate agents or would like to, have rentals and things like that. Can you talk to them a little bit about that?
I can. I think from a hiring perspective, what I look for, the first thing you do get is a resume, right? So you certainly want to get a feeling for the individual's background. But I'm not hiring a piece of paper, and I'm not hiring an award. I'm not hiring a spreadsheet. I really want to get a feel for that person's passion, their specific skill sets that they bring to the table. I want to find a person that's driven, that's confident, that understands themselves, and really is someone who's going to contribute to the organization. And I'll tell you, I think probably one of the biggest things I look for is humility. When I'm sitting in front of somebody and they start to demonstrate the characteristics that I associate with humility, that's the person who has my attention, because that person's confident, but they're still willing to learn. And they understand that they don't know everything, and they want to be a part of something, and they're humbling themselves to that process, and so they're open-minded to learn and try new things. So that's probably the biggest things that I'm looking for. I want to see that they care. I want to see that they have a positive attitude. I want to get a feel for how resourceful they are. Obviously they need to be professional. I want to make sure that they're committed, ambitious. I'm looking for a fun person, a person that can work well within teams. And if they have all of that plus the past experience and the skill set, then that's the person that we're going to invest some time in and help grow in our organization. We really want to have a person who is still committed to serving and has the skill sets to do it, the confidence and the passion to execute. So that's what I'm looking for. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people that I've hired in the past prior to really focusing on these intangibles that were great on paper, but when it came to working with them and living with them every day, side by side, and getting things done, it was those character traits that weren't there that caused them to or caused me to have them move on. I would rather have a less proficient person that's more passionate and willing to learn than a person who thinks they know everything, right? The one thing that folks really have to understand on the outside is it's a very fluid environment. So you've got to remain humble, you've got to remain flexible, and you've got to be committed to being a lifelong learner, so to speak. That's the only way that any organization is going to grow, right? That's what we said. Change is constant. Either grow or die, right? I need someone who's going to evolve with us, and generate opportunity.
So can you explain a little bit about what, it's selfless service, what selfless service meant to us as active duty and what it means when you transition out and you're serving in a civilian capacity into a position. As far as you're in a position now, you're there, you made it there, you got hired. Now, that got you there. Now, how do you stay there? And, one thing that was always talked about was selfless service when you were in. How do you relate that to someone in the civilian world now?
I think the selfless service piece, if I had to really just give one solid piece of advice, is you have to focus on the needs of the people around you. And, it's not just about being a manager. You still need to be a leader. And sometimes that means, you might work a little bit later and you might not get paid, or, you might seek opportunities within the company to bring people together. You might recommend that you get involved in something within your community and build camaraderie with your team. And maybe you got to take it on the chin. Maybe you got to pay for it. Maybe you got to host those opportunities. When I first got out, personally, I would host a lot of parties at my house for my team and bring people together and really try and foster that camaraderie and get people to know one another, so they weren't just, people pushing paper. It was people supporting the greater good. And so I had greater flexibility there, obviously, because, I'm in sales, selling real estate. But, even within Heroes Media Group and the foundation and the things that we're doing there, we really look for opportunities to bring people together. And we ask our employees and the folks that are supporting us all the time, what can we do to make the quality of life better for folks, or what are we doing good, what are we not doing well, and really focus on that. But I think it really begins with understanding and supporting and committing to serve the people that are around you. And that's the best way that you can take that selfless service piece from the military and bring it into either a government organization or civilian organization or your own company if you're starting it. I think it really begins and ends with that commitment to do more for the folks that you're responsible for. And if you continue to do that, you'll continue to meet with success.
Sometimes it's difficult when you transition and you are trying to think more about other people than yourself because it's so stressful sometimes getting out.
Well, I got a quote for you, Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
When in doubt, serve your way out.
There you go. That's perfect.
That's good.
And I've coined that. It's Sam Cachola. You can quote me all day long, and that's what I tell folks. When you're, I guess, when you're frustrated or you don't know where to go, it's because you're really focused on yourself, and you have to look outside of yourself for the answer. And the best way to do that is find a way to serve. Invest in someone else. It'll get your mind off of your issues, and believe it or not, it's going to get you clarity on what you need to do. So when in doubt, serve your way out. Don't just sit there and focus on your problem, because I can tell you, what you need to solve that problem is probably going to come from the other people that you're going to meet or get around as you're trying to help them or serve a greater need.
Well, Sam, we're heading out here in about 5 seconds. So, hey, it was really great to have you on the podcast today. Please go to VirginiaHeroes.com and also HeroesAlliance.com. You can also call 877-824-3763 or 703-785-1158.
Thank you for listening today. Please visit us at BattlefieldResumes.com and find out how to build the business of you. Give us some feedback on topics that you'd like to know about. And remember, most of all, make today count.